Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Chris Coburn, a member of the Board of Trustees, and I have the real pleasure of introducing our speaker today. You know, just thinking about this, much of the world is aware of the link between manned spaceflight and a certain city in Texas. Keen NASA observers know, though, however, that Cleveland held a special place in the agency long before there was a NASA presence in Houston. Launched as the Aircraft Engine Research Laboratory in 1940, what is now NASA Glenn Research Center was one of the original NASA field installations when the agency was established in 1958. The link with NASA runs deep in our region. 24 astronauts, including Neil Armstrong and John Glenn, have called Ohio home more than any other state. NASA's first administrator, Keith Glennon, took leave from his job as president of Case Institute of Technology to serve as, to lead the new agency. And finally, George Lowe, who started his career with NASA in Cleveland, also served as NASA administrator. His oldest son, Mark, is with us today at the speaker's table. I should also note we have three former NASA Glenn Field Center directors here in the audience, as well as Senator Sherrod Brown, Congressman Dennis Kucinich, and Congresswoman Marcia Fudge. Our thanks to all of them. Today, the City Club welcomes General Charlie Bolden, the current NASA administrator, astronaut, fighter pilot, or as he has pointed out, attack pilot, Marine Corps Major General, and entrepreneur. When President Obama appointed him 1 year ago as the 12th administrator of the agency, he capped nearly 4 decades of service as the first African American to lead that storied organization. Born in Columbia, South Carolina during the pre-civil rights era, Bolden had little reason to anticipate a future in space exploration. When I was a kid, he explained in an interview, all astronauts were male, all astronauts were test pilots, all astronauts were white, and all astronauts were the same size. I didn't fit into most of those categories. After graduating from the Naval Academy, he would go on to fly more than 100 combat missions in Vietnam, and he did become a test pilot with ultimately more than 6,000 hours in the air. He flew on the shuttle 4 times, including piloting STS-31, which in 1990 deployed the Hubble Space Telescope, and he commanded STS-60, the first joint U.S.-Russian shuttle mission in 1994. His 34-year Marine Corps career included postings around the globe and also included 14 years in the NASA astronaut office. He retired from the Marine Corps in 2003 to lead his own company and serve on numerous boards. General Bolden's administrative career with NASA began unexpectedly in the aftermath of the 1986 explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Following the tragedy, Bolden led a team selected to investigate the disaster. President Obama's request for him to rejoin the agency was met with broad praise. Former Johnson Space Center Director George Abbey, a longtime NASA top executive, commented, "He's a real leader. NASA has been looking for a leader like this that they could have confidence in." The General's leadership is certainly being tested today at NASA as it is at one of its most critical junctures in its 50-year history. The Space Shuttle, the agency's signature program, ends in February. President Obama, in an acknowledgement of the ongoing fiscal crisis, reversed the Bush administration's plans to return Americans to the moon. The agency's role in other key areas such as space science and climate change demand increased attention. Creating a new plan and forging a consensus behind it with diminished resources will be a heroic challenge, which we're certain that the General is up for. General Bolden and his wife Jackie have 2 children, Anthony, a lieutenant colonel in the Marines, and we heard about Anthony's 3 daughters a moment ago, and Kelly, a surgeon who's currently in a plastic surgery fellowship. It's a great honor for me to welcome Major General Charles Bolden, NASA Administrator of the City Club.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks very much. Chris, thanks very much for the very kind introduction, and thanks to my classmates for the gift. Thanks to all of you and distinguished guests. All of you are distinguished guests, but real distinguished guests down here at the head table. It's a pleasure for me to be here. You know, I want to thank Senator Brown for inviting me to come out and actually being the person that facilitated my visit here. We we planned this quite some time ago, and I'm glad that we were able to carry it out. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here. Over the years, Cleveland and the Lewis Research Center, now Glenn, have been an incredibly productive part of the space agency. And I think the future, the path ahead for Glenn is incredibly bright. I look forward to sharing with all of you, and particularly the members of the Ohio delegation, plans for carrying out the President's vision and the new assignments that we have in mind for Glenn. I also want to take this opportunity to announce to this audience that for some of you who may not have had a chance to read the blogs and other things just yet, it was my privilege this morning at Glenn and on all hands to announce that the new permanent center director for Glenn Research Center is Ray Lugo, my longtime friend, an incredible leader, a person who took the helm and stepped into big shoes, those of his erstwhile former center director, Woodrow Whitlow, who I captured from here, and I didn't have to pay him however much Miami had to pay. Besides, I didn't have it to pay him anyway. But Woodrow served admirably here as the center director for a number of years, following in the footsteps of a mentor of both of ours, who is also here in the room with us. And I learned a long time ago that you don't ever get up behind Julian Earls to come to the podium. So I agreed to speak only if they would promise me that Julian was not going to say anything before I got to speak. For those of you who have never heard Julian Earl speak, there is no more dynamic, motivating, inspiring speaker that I have ever heard, to be quite honest. And I say that in all sincerity, Julian, and I think you've heard me tell people before, don't put me behind Julian Earl. I'm not talking. So it is a pleasure for me to be here. But Ray has had a long and distinguished career in NASA that he continues now. He started in 1975, as a matter of fact, at the Kennedy Space Center as a co-op. So he is a longtime NASA person. I would ask you all, though, he is not here, unfortunately, in the city because his mother is gravely ill, and he and his family are in Florida with her. He asks only that you pray not just for her, but for his dad, who is 80-some-odd years old. And for the men in the room, we don't do this very well. We don't handle it very well without our partners. And so his dad's really having a hard time. So Ray asked that all of you keep his father as well as his mom and the family in your thoughts and prayers, and I ask that you do the same. It's good to be back here. I don't get to Cleveland very often. My most memorable time here, believe it or not, was for a parade. I don't do parades. But I came here as a young NASA astronaut, and I was in, I think, one of two parades that I've done in my life. I hate parades. I like to see them. I do not like to be in them. But the one thing that impressed me about the parade, and I think it was Family Day. Do they still have that here? No? How long did it stop? But it was incredible because we went all through the streets of Cleveland, through a lot of ethnic neighborhoods, and I, never having been to Cleveland before, I got a feel for how incredibly diverse this city is, and what a wealth of culture is here in the city of Cleveland. Back then it was tough, as I imagine it's probably tough now, because anytime you have the richness of a city like Cleveland, with all the different cultures that you have, then you will have strife, but you also, as we say in NASA, you have opportunity for greatness. And I think one of the things that has made Cleveland so great is that in spite of all the diversity and areas that present opportunities for disagreement and strife, you all tend to pull together, and you have become a great city. So it's a pleasure to be back here.